CRT, cathode ray tube. To most gamers, these majestic televisions are merely antiquated technology. These displays, also known as backbreakers or grandma's babysitter, are said to be more useful as weapons than a fun way to play today's video games. Ever since the release of the PlayStation 4 on November 2013, most modern consoles and graphic cards fail to support the beloved consumer-grade CRT television, not allowing for resolutions below 480p, the dirty bastards. Instead, shmup players and arcade fans alike have been forced to make do with modern LCD displays, with their increased input lag and inability to crush the human skull. However, in the deepest and most learned gaming circles, there exists a device, a converter some might say, that allows modern video output to function on their traditional CRT. This device also avoids the display lag penalty that the lesser of its kind inflict, and while it may be discontinued and obscure, there is no doubt that when it comes to exploring the current landscape of retro gaming on modern consoles, the Extron Emotia 2 is the key to bringing the past back to the future. Over the course of this channel's history, I've made frequent references to playing modern ports of shmups and arcade games, stuff like the M2 Shot Triggers ports, on my good old-fashioned CRT television. And in the comments section, a lot of people have been wondering, how exactly am I achieving this, especially when it comes to input lag tests? How am I taking the signal from my PS4, which is 480p, HDMI only, and getting it into the S-video of my consumer-grade 15Hz 240p Sony Trinitron? And so what I want to do in this video is not only discuss the method in which I am doing this with the least amount of input lag that I think is possible, but I also want to talk about why I personally prefer using the Extron Emotia, even though it is a discontinued piece of hardware and isn't exactly the most available thing to get your hands on, versus the other downscaling options out there. That being said, if you find another downscaling option that works for your setup, that's totally fine. And I have had my Extron Emotia for many years now, about 4 or 5 years at this point. So this thing is battle hardened. I've used it frequently, almost on a daily basis for many years, and I just have a lot of faith in this piece of hardware. And I also think it has a lot of features that are really looked over if you are specifically trying to use it for shmups. And so that is, of course, the focus of this channel, and why I think if you're interested in playing shmups on CRTs, especially consumer-grade CRTs, this thing is definitely worth at least taking a look at, and not a lot of people are even aware of its existence, which is a good and bad thing. Good because you might be able to get your hands on it before it becomes a big craze, but bad because if you don't know about it, then you're missing out, obviously. But I want to take a step back and talk about a subject that may seem a little bit unrelated, but I think actually is pretty important to discuss, which is the debate between using a consumer-grade CRT versus using PVMs. And I know the PVM craze, especially over the past 5 or 6 years, has gotten really big. There are certain channels out there, I can't quite put my finger on what the name of the channel is, but there are channels out there that really love PVMs and really sort of establish this huge sort of push towards people getting PVMs, people using PVMs, and they are really cool. But one thing that I do want to discuss in this video, because this is a plus of the Extron Emotia, is that I think there are a few flaws with PVMs that don't get discussed as often. And while you may want to take a step back and maybe consider getting your hands on a good old-fashioned consumer-grade CRT, which the Extron Emotia works with very well. So I personally was really interested in getting a PVM 5 or 6 years ago. I went all around the state actually going into news stations and stuff and asking if they have PVMs. And I could have gotten one at one point, but you know, the price of shipping and all that, it seemed a little bit silly. So I decided, okay, let's take a step back, and I actually started playing on a lot of CRT computer monitors using VGA, and I thought, this is the real deal. But then, after a while, I decided to get more and more into arcade-style hardware, and that led to an interesting thought, which is a big drawback of PVMs and a lot of even VGA computer monitors is the size. Yes, the screen clarity is really nice, and that's something you'll hear a lot about with the colors and RGB and all that, whereas a lot of consumer-grade televisions only accept S-Video. But I think people really underestimate the quality of S-Video, because I have now monitors that accept RGB and my CRT, and really the only big difference that I've seen between using a razor sharp S-Video and using RGB is that you do have more vibrant colors. But as far as the image clarity and everything, I think S-Video is pretty heavily slept on. And the reason why this is important is because if you're wanting to play shmups and you want to play them in Tate and you want to play them like you're playing them in the arcade on a big old arcade monitor, I think a really nice replacement for that, because arcade monitors are incredibly hard to get their hands on and they're very expensive and you have to have a cabinet and everything. If you want to find a nice analog to that, I think getting a big old Sony Trinitron 32-incher, that's actually a little bit bigger than I think some arcade monitors, is a really nice direction to go, and that's what I've been playing on for years. And for me, I like playing on larger monitors because as nice and crisp and clean as it is playing on these smaller PVMs and everything, if you're going for big scores and shmups, some people have the hawk eye vision to be able to make that work, but I think there is something to be said about having a nice big old monitor, and that's where the Extron Emotia really shines, is if you're wanting to use your CRT television as a stand-in for an arcade monitor. And there's specific features that it has that I do not think other downscalers have. I could be mistaken because I don't own all the downscalers, but I have tried to research everything they have to offer, stuff like the GBS Control and stuff like the Retrotink, I believe. And so let's go over the features of why I think if you're a shmup fan or an arcade fan, you really should consider, if you're looking to play on CRT a lot, an Extron Emotia, even though it can be an absolute pain in the ass to get your hands on one. And actually what I did to get my Extron Emotia is that I checked eBay for it every single day for a few months, and eventually it came up in the Salvation Army technology section and they had no idea what it was, and I bought it for $80 or something. So I think if you're trying to get it directly from a gamer on eBay, it's probably going to be pretty price inflated, but I do think you can still catch them in the wild if you're patient. But I want to go over the features of the Extron Emotia and why I enjoy it so much. So the first feature that definitely gets slept on is this whole overscan slash being able to adjust the screen. This thing is essential for shmups, because on a lot of the PS4 shmups and a lot of just general computer shmups, indie shmups, stuff like that, there isn't that nice feature that a lot of cave games have where you can adjust the screen size and put it all these different places. But what's really cool is that the Extron Emotia is actually able to do this, and it has a pretty large range because of the overscans. So you basically can stretch and move around the image on the screen however you like. And the reason why that's really good, it may seem trivial, is because when it comes to really large CRT displays like a Sony Trinitron 32-incher, what you get is this curve of the screen that on smaller monitors either doesn't exist. I don't know if it's on PVMs, I don't think it is, but you know, on smaller CRTs it's there, but it's not that big of a deal. Some filters and retro games actually have an ability to bend it like a CRT, but when you get into these larger monitors, the bend is much more noticeable, and a lot of people have said, well, doesn't that bend get a little bit obnoxious when you're playing shmups? And it kind of does, but the Extron Emotia is here to help you, because what you are able to do, and what I do, is that you can move the image up on screen. So rather than having the black bars of a Tate shmup, getting a little bit technical here, you know, you have the gutters, as I call them, above and below. What I like to do is I actually like to raise it up, so I just have one gutter below, then I have the top of my play screen hitting the top of the CRT, and that really minimizes the whole screen bend. And if you had the other downscalers, I'm not sure if you're able to make that happen. Another really cool thing about the Extron Emotia is the input lag on this bad boy. So I've tested this many times, and I have not been able to perceive any input lag with my testing equipment. Now, I do know that other channels like RetroRGB have these really fancy input lag testers and everything like that that are much more precise than my method, but my method has been pretty tried and true over the years, and if it was over a frame of lag, I would be able to pick up on it. But when I compare the input lag of just natively going to a CRT from my computer monitor and then taking that and running it through the Extron, so same computer, same settings, same program, same hardware, everything is literally the same except running it through the Emotia or running it directly into a computer VGA CRT, you'll find that they both respond within 1 frame when it comes to using shmup arch Ketsui. They both respond in 1 frame. So maybe in there somewhere the Emotia adds half a frame or adds like a few milliseconds or everything, but I have not been able to detect it. And this is actually a really valuable piece of hardware when it comes to input lag testing on these modern consoles and stuff. Like the M2 ports and all the new arcade ports, when I do in my reviews and everything, yes, you can sort of subtract out your monitor and everything like that, but there's something just better about getting it as fast as possible onto a display. And thanks to a combination of the HDMI to VGA converter, which takes it, and then you put that into the Extron Emotia, which has inputs for VGA, and then you can output that VGA into S-Video, which is very clear, very sharp, really fantastic. And so reason why I really want to discuss this whole issue is because let's say you get another downscaler like the GBS Control. That thing does not output S-Video. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to run that in RGB or whatever it outputs to, and then run it through an S-Video converter and put that S-Video converter into your consumer CRT. Of course, if you're a PVM player, this doesn't matter. So if you have a PVM, I don't think the Extron Emotia is as desirable, though it still has really cool features like it outputs in those jumper type cables. And also, I think the screen adjusting is still really useful, even if you're playing on PVM. But that being said, the reason why this is really good is because if you're trying to play on a big old consumer CRT, like a big old Sony Trinitron, and you're running that RGB into an external S-Video converter, which I own one, it looks like dog shit. Those, at least the one that I got, which was some obscure one from Australia, not only are these converters hard to find, but the one that I was able to get my hands on looked like shit. It completely destroyed the colors and made the colors really dull, and it was almost like playing in black and white to a point. You know, it was like really desaturated. Whereas the color vibrancy coming off the Extron Emotia is actually really good. That S-Video within it is very strong, and so that's another thing that I think is definitely worth looking into. And so I wanted to make this video to discuss the Extron Emotia and discuss my overall setup so that people who are interested can give it a shot. And also because, like I said, this is not a piece of hardware that gets talked about a lot. I suspect it's probably because it is a discontinued piece of hardware, and so the trouble about talking about it is, you know, people have to hunt it down, and also there's just less incentive to talk about it. But I wanted to get this out there for everyone, and so thanks so much, and adios everyone. So thank you to the $5 patrons: 172 PCT Water, Ukshay Wadker, Dingo, Another Joe, Anthony A, Aaron Solis, Ben, Borgie22, Brian Reboot, Brian Shiver, Chris Yuzefovich, Chronic Burnout 3, Corio, Danielle Savage, Darren Griffin, Delta Tango 6, Disco Stas Leia, DJ 420 Praise It, Entropy, Eric H, FCK, Frank Carter, Full Set, Retro Schmupper, Geriatric, Don Maku, Hausu, Ilya, Kiwi, JLab, JB RPG, Joe Angelo, John Kelly, Gameboy Guru, K, K2, Kikoman589, Larridge, Malaise, Mark Toms, Maz, Minung, Mechlin, Mitch LY, Queen Charlene, Nathaniel Davis, and Electron, Neon Dagger Games, Okla Kugels, Philip Mason, Portal 63, Rattlecat, Raul, Real Skeen, Shen Sinzensky, SLW, The Boot Rex, The Real Ikuzo, The Old Bensta, TRM, Sugumo, Twilight, Ishi, Plasmo, and Yutsukaya. Thanks for watching.